For daylight photography, I normally prefer to leave the flash in my bag and shoot with natural light only. But depending on the weather, or the time of day, or the location, sometimes I absolutely need to use flash to get the look that I want. Last week I did a photo shoot with Aaron, and weather conditions were not great for natural light portraits. We had storms in the area, and the sky was dark and overcast. And this was our second attempt to get together for a shoot. Our previous one was rescheduled due to bad weather. So we were determined to get some good photos despite the weather this time. I'm going to show you 4 ways that we overcame these poor lighting conditions, sometimes with the speedlight and sometimes with camera settings alone, using the natural light to our advantage. We basically flipped the script on that bad light. We used our flash in 2 different ways. We used bare flash and we used the flash with a softbox. So bare flash, unmodified flash, what's that going to get you? Basically, it's going to get you more contrast. You've got harder shadows, a harsher light, and the look of artificial light. What's a softbox going to get you? Even a smaller softbox is still going to give you a wider shadow transition area. You're still going to get a little bit of contrast, but you're going to get a softer look to your light so it doesn't call too much attention to itself, which is basically the goal I had here. Here's our first example. Let's start with some shots using only natural light, no flash. You can see here the light's okay, but it's definitely a little flat. The light is very diffused and overcast, and we need to add some pop to make these photos more interesting. The camera settings here are ISO 400 because it's really dark and dreary. We're shooting at f2.8 and 1/250th of a second. Now I could use a slower shutter speed, but I'd probably introduce some camera shake with this 85mm lens that I'm using. And I could use a higher ISO, but really, honestly, nothing's gonna change the fact that we're still shooting with very flat light. All right, let's see what a bare flash can do to add some of that pop. Now I've got my compact light stand, which is nice and portable, and I'm shooting with the Godox TT685S. S is for Sony, and I'm using it in manual mode. ISO is 100 because I'd like to see the ambient light drop a little from what we're getting with ISO 400. My aperture is f2.8 and shutter speed is 1/250th of a second. Now I'm using my flash at 1/128th for some of the shots, and for others I'm using it at 1/64th power. Now you can see here this definitely adds some pop, and we're able to keep the background ambient light subdued while popping our model out from it. I think this looks pretty good, but if we're going for a nice natural fill light, we're not going to get it this way. I mean, this is okay if you want the look of artificial light, which is sometimes the goal, but we want to make this look a little less obvious here. Note here that these strong shadows sort of give away that we're using bare flash. In our next example, we're going to use a softbox this time. Now let's see if we can get a more natural look than we did with that unmodified flash. You can see in this next location it's a little darker, and I absolutely have to use at least ISO 400 for these shots. My shutter speed is 1/250th of a second, and my aperture is f2.8. This is fine though because we've got some nice rich color in the background, and I'd like to keep it. I'm using the Lastolite Easy Box with the same Godox flash, again in manual mode, and I've increased the power because we're shooting through diffusion material this time, and we need to use more power to get the same amount of light on our subject when we go from straight flash to a modifier like this. You can see our softbox produces less contrast than straight flash in these shots. Now a small softbox like this should be used no more than about 3 feet or 1 meter from the subject's face for best results, to give you that soft light look and those softer shadow transitions. But I wanted a little more spread to get wider than the standard head and shoulder shot, so I positioned the light a little farther away than I normally would. It still gives a nice effect, better than the flash alone, and we're just adding a touch of light, just a kiss of light so as not to overpower the ambient. We don't want to call too much attention to the fact that we're using artificial light. Like I said before, I prefer to use natural light outdoors if I can. Even though it was overcast, a change in location helped our situation. A light-colored building, like we had across from us, or a light-colored ground surface, these can help you bounce some of that ambient light back up around your subject, and we managed to do that here. In this final example, the sky was getting darker, and we took advantage of that to create some dramatic cinematic looks using the speedlight. Here's a shot demonstrating what this looks like without flash, and then how it looks when we pop that speed light in. We also shot a few without flash at ISO 640, 1/250th of a second at f1.4. These still look good, I think, very natural and cinematic. Both the flash versions and these non-flash versions were shot within 10 minutes of each other, and this just goes to show you how much variety you can achieve with some simple camera adjustments and the decision whether or not to use flash. Lots of different looks are possible, even under the poorest natural lighting conditions. So go out there and try some of these looks yourself. You don't need anything fancy, just get that flash off your camera and maybe try using a small softbox. I've got lots of other videos that you can refer to for tips on flash lighting techniques. I'll drop a link here and one in the description below. Hey, click that like button, subscribe, and leave a comment. Thanks for watching. I'll see you next time.